My principal straight up told my best friend, right to her face, that she was just imagining things after she reported a teacher for traumatizing me. She had seen problems where there weren't any, he said. When we tried to show him proof, he basically warned us that making false accusations would have consequences. So, we just left. That was a year ago. This morning, though, I saw that his retirement was making headlines on the front page of the news. It was back when I was a sophomore. Emily, the girl who used to be the most popular one in school, came back after being absent for the first 4 months of the year. As soon as she walked into class, the whole room went dead silent. Then, someone yelled out, cutting through the quiet, "There's the girl who got knocked up and is now a mom at 16. The whole class burst into laughter. That day, she ended up sitting by herself in the cafeteria, with papers being thrown at her from all directions. I thought about walking over to sit next to her, but my friend grabbed my shoulder and handed me a crumpled up piece of paper. "Don't feel sorry for her," it read. "She deserves this. She trapped her boyfriend into getting her pregnant. Instead of going D1 to play football, he's changing diapers now." Over the next few weeks, I kept an eye on Emily, and I couldn't help but see how her life at school turned into a nightmare. Teachers who used to admire her kindness and intelligence now acted like she was the problem with the world. They'd answer her questions sarcastically, treating her like she didn't belong. And during a class about intimacy and safety, the teacher seemed to stare at her the whole time, making her the center of attention in the worst way. The students were just as bad. Girls who used to copy her style whispered, "SL," whenever she passed by. Her friend group turned their backs on her immediately. Within 2 weeks, she had to delete all her social media. But through it all, there was one thing I noticed about Emily: she never let all the bullying turn her bitter or vengeful. I saw her after school, tutoring special needs kids. I watched her give lunch money to a freshman who'd forgotten his. She always kept tampons in her backpack for girls who needed them. And nobody ever thanked her for it. They'd just take what they needed and go on pretending she wasn't there. Everything changed the day I decided to skip 5th period. My mom had been on another bender the night before, and I had some bruises to show for it. My hands were shaking, so I needed a smoke to calm down. I went to a hidden spot behind the gym, where there were no cameras, and lit up. I was halfway through my cigarette when I heard footsteps. Mr. Johnson, my geometry teacher, came around the corner. Everyone liked him. Girls would giggle when he made jokes during class. "You having a rough day?" he asked, stepping closer to me. I knew I was caught, so I locked eyes with him and asked him not to tell anyone. "I won't," he said. Then he added, "I've noticed you've been stressed lately. I can help you relax." Before I could even process what was happening, he had me backed up against the wall. His hands were sliding down my arms, and I froze completely. My cigarette fell from my fingers. "Just let me help you," he whispered. "Back the F*** pay off." That's when Emily appeared, rounding the corner with pepper spray aimed directly at his face. Her hand was steady, but her voice was shaking with anger. Mr. Johnson stepped back, trying to cover himself. "I was just checking on a troubled student. You're misunderstanding the situation." "I saw everything," Emily said, her voice unwavering. "Leave. Now." The way she said it made him listen for once. He mumbled something about reporting us for smoking and then disappeared. I looked at Emily with gratitude in my eyes. She told me she had come out for a cigarette too. She wasn't a hero. It was just a case of being in the right place at the right time. Emily walked me straight to the principal's office. She demanded something be done about Mr. Johnson, but Principal Thompson barely looked up from his computer. "Mr. Johnson has been teaching here for 15 years with no complaints," he said. "Are you sure you didn't misinterpret what you saw?" "He had her pinned against the wall with his hands on her," Emily said. Thompson turned to me. "Is that what happened? Sometimes when we're upset, we see things differently than they really are." Then he turned back to Emily, and his voice turned even more condescending. "Given your situation, I understand you might see problems where there aren't any. If you didn't want drama, maybe you should have thought about that when you were 15. I was too shy and scared to say anything, so I just followed her. I wanted to talk to her right then and there, but she was gone. I didn't see her for the next 2 days, but when she came back, something awful happened to her. I was in algebra class when one of the guys who always made jokes about Emily called me over to show me something on his phone. I hesitated at first, but he and a few others kept pressuring me, so I finally gave in. He pulled up our year's private Instagram gossip account and told me to take a look, laughing the whole time. My stomach sank. There was a post about Emily, but it wasn't her. It was AI-generated nude photos with her face photoshopped onto them. I felt nauseous. "Pretty funny, right?" he said, laughing and turning to his friends behind him. I think they all assumed I was part of their group. I just nodded and walked out of the room. I had seen Emily earlier, so I immediately went looking for her. I found her at the usual spot behind the gym. She was sitting on the ground, crying uncontrollably. I didn't say a word, I just sat down next to her and comforted her. After 10 minutes of painful sobbing, she looked at me and said, "You're the only friend I have left." Then she suddenly hugged me. "You deserve to know the truth." She pressed her face into my chest. "My boyfriend Ethan isn't the father. He left me when he found out I was pregnant." I couldn't believe it. "Then who is the father?" I asked cautiously. "Mr. Johnson," she replied before breaking down into more tears. My heart sank. That was the same teacher who I had trusted to protect me. The one she had stopped from assaulting me. I held her while she cried, and my mind was spinning. Suddenly, everything made sense. The way Peterson had cornered me, how sure he'd been of himself. He'd done this before. Emily told me it started last year when she was struggling in his class. He offered to help her with extra tutoring after school. At first, everything seemed normal. Then he began making comments about how mature she was for her age, how special she was. She said she should have known better, but she was 15, and he made her feel important. One day, he kept her after tutoring, and that's when it happened. She never told anyone because who would believe her? The most beloved teacher in the school versus a popular girl who everyone already thought was stuck up. I asked her why she came back to school when everyone turned their backs on her. She wiped her eyes and said, "I couldn't let him win. She had to graduate. She had to show her baby that when things get tough, you don't give up." But now, with these fake photos circulating, she didn't know how much longer she could take it. I told her we had to do something. We couldn't let Peterson get away with this. She laughed bitterly and reminded me of what had happened in the principal's office. "No one would listen to us," she said. I told her maybe not alone, but together, we could figure something out. She looked at me like I was out of my mind, but I could see a tiny spark of hope in her eyes. We stayed there for another 20 minutes, talking. She told me about her parents, how disappointed they were in her. How they kept asking who the father was, but she couldn't tell them the truth. They would never believe that Peterson could do something like that. Her dad coached the junior varsity basketball team, and Peterson helped out sometimes. They were friends. Her mom volunteered at school events and was always praising how great of a teacher Peterson was. Emily said that telling them would destroy everything. I understood. My own mom wouldn't believe anything I told her on a good day. On a bad day, she'd probably find a way to blame me for it. The bell rang, and we had to go back to class. Emily asked if I'd sit with her at lunch tomorrow. I agreed right away. She smiled for the first time since I found her crying. It was small, but real. We walked back into school together, and I could feel people staring. Someone made a comment about me being the next one to get pregnant if I kept hanging out with Emily. I ignored them. Emily kept her head high, just like she always did. I couldn't help but wonder how she found the strength to keep going. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mr. Johnson. I couldn't stop thinking about how many other girls Mr. Johnson might have harmed. The fact that he was still teaching, still coaching, still adored by everyone, while Emily was being treated like garbage, made me furious. I grabbed my laptop and began searching, though I wasn't exactly sure what I was hoping to find. Maybe there were other complaints. Maybe there was something, anything, that could help us. I landed on the school's website and found Peterson's biography. It was everything he wanted people to see: Teacher of the Year 3 times. Coach of the mathletes, leading them to state championships. Volunteer work with troubled youth. It made me sick to my stomach. On paper, he was perfect. No wonder nobody was taking Emily's word seriously. I didn't stop there. I kept searching, digging through old yearbooks online, looking for any signs, any hints that someone had noticed something wrong. But all I found were perfect photos of Peterson surrounded by happy students and proud parents. The next morning, I met Emily at her locker before first period. She looked exhausted, but there was a sense of determination about her. Dark circles under her eyes, no amount of concealer could hide them. I told her I had been up all night thinking, and we needed to be strategic about this. She nodded, telling me she hadn't slept either, torn between taking care of her baby and the anxiety that ate at her. We couldn't go through official channels. No one would listen to us. We had to find another way. I suggested we try to figure out if Peterson had done this to anyone else. Emily's face darkened. She said she'd been wondering the same thing for months, especially in those long nights when she couldn't sleep. We decided to split up and ask around. Not directly, just casual conversations to see if anyone else had experienced anything strange with Peterson. Emily would talk to the girls in her grade who had him for geometry, and I'd talk to the sophomores currently in his class. We agreed to meet up at lunch to share what we found. The morning felt like it was dragging on forever. During English, I sat next to Grace, who had Peterson during third period. I casually asked how her geometry class was going, trying to keep my tone light, like it was no big deal. She shrugged and said it was fine. I pressed a little more, asking if Peterson was really as amazing as everyone said. She gave me this strange look, her pencil stopping mid-sentence. Yeah, he's helpful if you need it, she said, then quickly turned away, not speaking to me for the rest of the class. By lunchtime, I had spoken to 6 girls. 3 of them gave me the exact same weird look Grace had. As soon as I mentioned Peterson, their faces shut down. One girl actually started to speak, then stopped herself and said, "Never mind," her voice trailing off. Emily was already at our usual table in the back corner of the cafeteria, by the broken vending machine that hummed too loudly. Nobody else would sit there. She looked frustrated, picking at her sandwich but not eating. She had gotten similar responses. Girls would start to say something, then quickly change their minds. One junior, Olivia, had actually teared up when Emily mentioned Peterson's tutoring sessions. But when Emily asked if she was okay, Olivia practically ran away, leaving her lunch tray behind. We knew we were onto something, but nobody would talk. It reminded me of something I had heard in one of those true crime podcasts my mom used to listen to when she could focus. Predators usually don't have just one victim. They follow patterns. They have types. They have methods. Peterson liked vulnerable girls. Girls who were struggling in school. Girls who needed help. Girls no one would believe. Emily fit the profile perfectly. Pretty. Popular. But struggling with math. Parents who trusted Peterson without question. No one would believe her over him. I started to wonder how many other girls fit that exact same pattern. How many girls had sat in his class, feeling trapped. After school, Emily had to pick up her baby from her aunt's house. Her aunt had been watching him while Emily was at school. One of the few family members who hadn't completely given up on her. I offered to go with her, but she said her aunt already thought I was a bad influence on her. That hanging out with a teen mom would ruin my future too. So, I went to the library instead and grabbed yearbooks from the last 5 years. The librarian gave me a strange look but didn't ask questions. I began making a list of girls who'd been in Peterson's geometry classes. Then, I cross-checked those names with the honor roll lists, looking for students who suddenly improved in math. It was tedious, but I started to notice a pattern. Every year, there were 2 or 3 girls who went from C's or D's to A's in Peterson's class. Their grades in every other subject remained the same. But math? That shot up dramatically. I snapped pictures of the pages with my phone, making sure to capture the names and grade changes clearly. We needed evidence. That's what I was after. Later that night, Emily texted me. Her baby had been crying for hours, and she was exhausted, but she had a thought. Peterson kept a paper gradebook in his desk, a physical one besides the digital records. She had seen it during one of their tutoring sessions. He had written notes in it, not just grades, but personal comments about students. She remembered seeing her name with stars next to it. At the time, she thought it meant he saw something special in her. That maybe she was finally good at something. But now, she wondered what those stars really meant. The next day at school felt even harder. The AI-generated photos were still being passed around, despite the administration's supposed zero-tolerance policy. Someone had printed them out and taped them inside Emily's locker. She ripped them down silently, but I could see her hands shaking. I saw the way she blinked back tears. In the hallway between classes, a group of guys made crude comments as we passed. One of them, Ryan, the quarterback who thought he was the best thing ever, actually reached out like he was going to grab Emily. I stepped in front of him, told him to back off. He laughed and said I was protective of my new girlfriend. His friends found it hilarious, their laughter bouncing off the lockers. Emily pulled me away before I could say anything. It's not worth it. They're not worth it. We stood at her locker when Peterson walked by. He slowed down and looked right at us. Not at Emily. At me. His face was friendly, almost concerned. The perfect image of a caring teacher. He asked if everything was okay, his voice soft, almost paternal. My skin crawled, but I forced myself to nod. He said if I ever needed to talk, his door was always open. Then, like nothing had happened, he walked away, his shoes clicking on the linoleum floor. Emily's face went pale. She whispered, that's exactly how it started with me. The concern. The open door. The wanting to help. I felt sick. At lunch, we came up with a plan. We had to get into Peterson's classroom and find that grade book. Emily mentioned that during summer school, she had helped with inventory for the math department and still had access through the main department office. They never changed the locks, and she noticed teachers left spare keys in the supply closet. We'd go after school when Peterson was at basketball practice. He was the assistant coach and always left by 3:30, not returning until after 5. That gave us enough time to search. It was risky, but we didn't have any other choice. Nobody would talk to us. The administration wouldn't listen. We had to find the proof ourselves. The rest of the day felt like it was dragging on. In geometry class, I watched Peterson teach as if nothing was wrong. He joked about parallel lines never meeting, just like some people in high school. The students laughed. The girls smiled at him. He called on me once, and I managed to answer without my voice betraying me. He said, good job, and moved on. I wondered how he did it. How could he hurt Emily? Try to hurt me? Probably hurt others too, and still stand up there like some perfect teacher. The bell finally rang, and I met Emily by the gym. We watched Peterson walk toward practice, laughing with a few players about the previous week's game. The coast was clear. Emily led me to the math department office. The door was unlocked. Teachers were always coming and going. She went straight to the supply closet, grabbed the key ring with all the spare keys. Peterson's room number was clearly labeled. My hands were sweating as we walked down the empty hallway. Peterson's classroom was at the end, past the other math rooms and the small tutoring office. The key fit perfectly. Inside, the room looked exactly like you'd expect. Inspirational math posters about perseverance on the walls, student work pinned up. His desk was neat and organized, a coffee mug that said, World's Best Teacher, sitting next to a stack of papers. We started searching. Emily went through the desk drawers while I checked the filing cabinet. The first drawer was empty. The second had tests. The third had attendance sheets. The bottom drawer was locked. Emily found a letter opener, and with it, we managed to pry the drawer open. Inside, there were 3 grade books, this year's, and 2 from previous years. Emily grabbed them, and we started flipping through the pages. At first, it seemed normal. Grades, assignments, the usual teacher stuff. But then, Emily found the pages with stars. There were 5 girls in the current year's grade book with stars next to their names. 3 juniors, 2 sophomores. All had shown significant improvement in the second semester. The same pattern showed up in the previous years. Stars next to certain names. Always girls. Always students who had struggled but then suddenly excelled. Emily recognized a few of the names. Olivia was there with 3 stars. So was Madison, a girl who graduated last year. Another was Charlotte, who had moved away during junior year. I quickly took pictures of every page with stars, making sure the names and markings were clear. We had to hurry. Practice would be over soon. As we put the books back, a folded piece of paper fell out. Emily grabbed it. It was a note. Written on the kind of stationery teenage girls used. The handwriting was young, neat, careful cursive. Mr. P, thank you for yesterday. I won't tell anyone. Please don't fail me. There was no signature, but the paper looked old, worn, like he'd kept it for a while. Emily's face turned white. She whispered that she had written something similar once. He had made her write it. Said it was to show she appreciated the tutoring. Now, she realized it was insurance. A way to make it look like she was the one pursuing him. We froze when we heard footsteps coming down the hallway. My heart stopped. We shoved everything back into the drawer and quickly locked it. The footsteps got closer. They were slow, deliberate. Emily grabbed my hand and yanked me behind the door just as it opened. Principal Thompson walked in. He glanced around the empty classroom before heading straight for Peterson's desk. He opened the top drawer, pulled out a folder, flipped through it, and put it back before leaving. We waited in silence for what felt like an eternity. Barely breathing. My legs were shaking so badly, I could barely stand. Emily looked like she might throw up. We slipped out quietly and locked the door behind us. Outside, we sat on the bleachers, trying to process everything we had just discovered. Thompson checking Peterson's desk. The stars. The note. The pattern that seemed to span years. Emily said we had to tell someone. But who? The principal was obviously involved in some way. The school board? The police? Would they believe 2 teenage girls with just phone pictures and a wild story? I said we needed more. We needed one of those other girls to come forward. To back up Emily's story. She agreed, but said none of them would. They were scared. Just like she had been. Still was. That night, I couldn't eat. My mom was passed out, so she didn't notice. All I could think about were those names. The stars. How many girls had Peterson hurt? How long had this been going on? I decided to look up some of the names on social media. Olivia had her profiles locked down tight. Madison seemed to have vanished from social media entirely after graduation. Charlotte's last posts were from 2 years ago. Right before she moved away. None of them were active anymore. Just like Emily had to delete hers. Pattern after pattern. The next morning, Emily texted me. She was staying home. Her baby had a fever, and she couldn't leave him. I decided to continue my search on my own. At school, I felt exposed, like Peterson somehow knew what we had been up to without saying a word. But he acted just like he always did in class. Teaching angles and proofs. Cracking his usual jokes. Now, though, I couldn't help but watch him more carefully. I noticed he always singled out certain girls to help. The quiet ones. The ones sitting alone. The ones who looked worn out or stressed. It was like he had a certain type. Emily had been different. Popular. Confident. At least, that's how she appeared on the surface. But underneath, she had her own struggles, fighting with math in a family that demanded nothing less than perfection. At lunch, I sat by myself at Emily's usual table. Across the cafeteria, I spotted Olivia sitting with a few other girls. I had seen her name in the grade book. 3 stars next to it. She looked drained. Thin. Like she wasn't getting enough to eat. I walked over and asked if I could sit with them. The other girls exchanged looks, but Olivia nodded. We talked about classes and homework for a few minutes. Then, casually, I mentioned I was having trouble in Peterson's class. Olivia's fork stopped in midair. I told her I was considering asking for tutoring, but wasn't sure about it. She put her fork down and softly said I should look for a different tutor. Maybe a student or online tutoring. Anything but staying after with Peterson. The other girls shifted uncomfortably. One quickly changed the topic to the upcoming winter formal. But Olivia kept looking at me. After lunch, she pulled me aside in the hallway. She asked why I was really asking about Peterson. I decided to take a chance and told her about Emily. About what Peterson had done to her. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. She whispered that she couldn't talk about it. She had worked so hard to bury it. Her parents had dismissed her when she tried to talk to them. They said Peterson was a great teacher who had helped her improve her grades. They couldn't understand why she was being ungrateful. She transferred to online school her senior year just to escape him. But the memories never really faded. I asked if she'd be willing to speak up for Emily. To back her up so people would believe her. Olivia shook her head. She said she couldn't go through that again. The questions. The doubt. The judgment. She had seen what happened to Emily. The fake photos. The rumors. She couldn't bear to go through that herself. She was applying to colleges. She needed recommendation letters. She couldn't risk this following her around. I understood, but it frustrated me. How many girls would keep quiet while Peterson kept teaching? Olivia must have seen the frustration on my face because she apologized. Then she walked away. Later that afternoon, I had study hall in the library. I was researching whether there was a way we could report this anonymously to someone outside the school when Avery, a girl from my English class, sat down across from me. She was quiet, always had good grades, and kept to herself. She asked what I was working on. I said it was just some research for a project. She nodded and then slid a folded piece of paper across the table. She said Olivia had told her I was asking about Peterson. Then, before I could respond, she got up and left. I opened the paper. It was a screenshot of text messages. Peterson's number asking a student to stay after school for extra help. But then the messages started to take a more unsettling turn. The messages asked if she had told anyone about their meetings. He told her she was special. That he could offer her more than just math help. My hands were shaking as I read. This was it, actual proof. I immediately texted Emily. She called me from her aunt's house. I told her everything, about Olivia, Avery, and the texts. She started crying. But not sad tears. Relieved tears. She wasn't imagining things. She wasn't the only one. Other girls had gone through this too. We decided to meet the next day to figure out what to do next. Now, we had evidence. But we needed to be cautious with it. Peterson had been doing this for years. He was careful, covered his tracks. We had to be even more careful. That night, I made copies of everything. The photos from the grade books. If something happened to our phones, we'd still have proof. I barely slept, my mind racing. I kept thinking about Peterson teaching like nothing was wrong tomorrow. Picking out his next target. Maybe he was already working on someone new. Just the thought of it made my stomach turn. We had to stop him. But we were just teenagers. He was a well-liked teacher. Who would believe us? The next day, Emily came back to school. Her baby was feeling better, and her aunt could watch him. She was tired but determined. We met before first period to plan. We decided to give the administration one last chance. This time, we'd bring everything. The photos. The texts. All of it. If Thompson wouldn't take us seriously, we'd go to the superintendent. If they wouldn't act, we'd go to the school board. Someone had to care that a teacher was exploiting students. Someone had to stop him. We walked into the main office. The secretary asked if we had an appointment. We told her it was urgent. She rolled her eyes but called Thompson. He came out looking annoyed. He said he had 5 minutes before his next meeting. We followed him to his office. Emily spoke first. She said we had proof that Peterson had been inappropriate with students. Thompson sighed and muttered something about us already bringing this up before. That's when I pulled out the printed photos. The grade book pages. The stars. The pattern. Thompson barely glanced at them. He dismissed it, saying that improvements in grades didn't mean anything, just that he was a good teacher. Then I showed him Avery's screenshot. His expression shifted. He looked at it more carefully, then asked where we had gotten it from. I told him it was from a student, another one of Peterson's victims. Thompson set the paper down and turned to us. He said this was a serious accusation. If we were wrong, we could destroy a man's career. Did we understand that? Emily spoke up. She said Peterson had ruined her life. She was 16 and had a baby because a teacher she trusted had taken advantage of her. How was his career worth more than that? Thompson said he'd look into it. That we should go back to class and let him handle things. There was something off about the way he said it. Too calm. Too dismissive. We left his office, feeling defeated again. Emily said he wasn't going to do anything. He'd probably warn Peterson, and things would only get worse. I agreed. We needed a new plan. As we were heading to class, someone called out Emily's name. We turned around to see Mrs. Williams, the AP biology teacher, standing there. She asked if we could talk after school, saying it was important. We agreed, though we were both confused. Mrs. Williams had never really paid much attention to us. She mostly taught seniors, and we didn't have her for any classes. But something in the way she looked at us made us curious. The day dragged on slowly. Peterson seemed off in geometry. Distracted. He kept glancing at his phone, stumbling over problems that he usually solved effortlessly. At one point, he stared at me for too long. It was like he was trying to figure something out. I kept my expression neutral, but my heart was racing. Did Thompson tell him about our meeting? Did he know we had been in his classroom? After class, he asked me to stay behind. My stomach sank. I told him I needed to get to my next class, but he insisted it would only take a minute. As other students filed out, I knew we'd soon be alone. He called my name again. His voice had a sharper tone. He said we needed to talk. About my grades. About my potential. About how he could help me succeed in his class. His words were innocent, but his tone wasn't. I practically ran out of the room. In the hallway, I texted Emily. Peterson knew what we were up to. We needed to be careful. She texted back, saying she'd gotten a strange vibe from him too. Like he was watching her. We agreed to stick together for the rest of the day. Safety in numbers. After school, we met Mrs. Williams in her empty classroom. She shut the door and pulled the blinds down, making me nervous, but Emily seemed to trust her. Mrs. Williams sat on a desk, watching us for a long moment. Then she asked if we were the ones asking questions about Peterson. We exchanged a look but nodded. She said she'd heard from Olivia and Avery that we were trying to do something about it. She wanted to help. Emily asked why she cared. Mrs. Williams explained that over the years, she had noticed patterns. Girls who had suddenly dropped out of extracurriculars. Who had gone from being outgoing to withdrawn. Who had dramatically improved in Peterson's class. 2 years ago, she tried talking to Thompson about it, but he shut her down right away. He told her she was imagining problems that didn't exist. He even threatened to fire her if she kept talking about it. So she stayed quiet, but kept watching. Kept noticing things. I asked if she had any proof. She shook her head. Just her observations and gut feelings. But she did know other teachers who had noticed the same patterns. Mr. Garcia in Spanish. Ms. Miller in history. They had all tried to speak out at different times, but every single one had been silenced. Peterson was untouchable. He brought in awards for the school. Parents loved him. The school board practically adored him. Mrs. Williams said the only way to stop him was to take the issue outside of the school system. Emily asked what she meant by that. Mrs. Williams pulled out a business card. It was for a detective at the local police department. Detective Emma Davis. Mrs. Williams said she specialized in crimes involving minors. She would take us seriously, but we had to be ready. Once we talked to the police, everything would change. The school would protect its own. People would take sides. It was going to get ugly. Were we really ready for what came next? I looked at Emily. She was clutching the card like it might burn her. I could tell she was thinking about her baby. Her parents. How much worse things could get. But then, she squared her shoulders and said, yes. She was ready. She couldn't let Peterson continue hurting anyone else. Mrs. Williams said she'd get in touch with Detective Mills to set up a meeting. She told us to gather all the evidence. Make sure to copy everything. And, above all, be careful. Peterson had powerful connections. The next 2 days felt unbearable. Peterson's eyes were always on us. In class. In the hallways. Even across the cafeteria during lunch, I'd catch him watching. Soon, other students noticed too. Ryan made a joke about Peterson being interested in the teen mom and her friend. His friends laughed, but I could feel a cold shiver run down my spine. Emily started asking one of us to walk her to her car after school. Usually, it was me or one of the few girls who still spoke to her. Detective Mills agreed to meet us that Saturday at the police station. Mrs. Williams joined us for support. The station was smaller than I expected, just a regular building in the downtown area. Detective Mills was younger than I thought, probably in her early 30s. She had soft eyes and a firm handshake. She led us to a private room and said we could tell her everything. There was no rush. No judgment. Just the truth. Emily spoke first. She told the entire story. The tutoring. The compliments. How Peterson made her feel special. Then, how it all began to shift. How he started touching her arms. Her hands. How he'd keep her after school. Then, how one day, he kissed her, and she froze. How it all escalated from there. How she was too scared and confused to say anything. How, when she got pregnant, he convinced her to blame Ethan. He said nobody would believe her anyway. A respected teacher versus a popular girl. She would be painted as someone trying to cover up her own mistakes. Detective Mills took notes without interrupting. After Emily finished, I showed her the evidence we had. The grade book photos. The stars next to certain names. Avery's screenshot. The pattern that spanned several years. Detective Mills went through everything, asking about dates. Times. Specific incidents. She was thorough, but gentle. She was professional. When we finished, she said she believed us. But believing wasn't enough. She needed more to build a case. She asked if we could get other victims to come forward. I told her about Olivia. About the other girls who refused to speak up. Detective Mills understood their fear. But she emphasized that their testimonies would strengthen the case. She gave us her direct phone number and told us to call if we remembered anything else or if anything new happened. She also warned us to be careful. If Peterson caught wind of the police involvement, he might try to destroy evidence or intimidate witnesses. We left the station with a mixture of hope and fear. Someone believed us. But now, it was real. An investigation was about to begin. There would be questions. Maybe even a trial. Emily's parents would learn the truth. The entire school would find out. On the drive back, Mrs. Williams told us we were brave. She was proud of us. But I didn't feel brave. I felt like I was going to be sick. Monday at school was strange. Peterson wasn't there. A substitute taught geometry. Rumors spread quickly. Some said he was sick. Others claimed he was at a teaching conference. But Emily and I knew the truth. The investigation had begun. At lunch, Principal Thompson called us into his office. He looked furious. He asked if we had gone to the police. Told us we should have come to him first. Let him handle it internally, Thompson suggested. Emily burst out laughing. She actually laughed in his face. She told him we had already tried that, and it hadn't worked. Thompson insisted we didn't understand the damage we were causing. Peterson was a good man. A good teacher. These accusations, he said, would ruin him. Did we want that burden on our conscience? Finally, I found my voice. What about the girls he's hurt? I asked. What about their lives? Their damage? Thompson dismissed it as alleged and unproven. We were destroying a man's career based on rumors and misunderstandings. Then, he said something that made my blood run cold. He warned us to be careful. That making false accusations could have serious consequences, legal ones. Emily stood up. We're done here, she said firmly. We're not saying anything else without a lawyer present. Thompson's face turned red, but he didn't stop us as we left his office. In the hallway, Emily was shaking. He just threatened us, she said. I nodded in agreement. We immediately texted Detective Mills. She told us to document everything. Write down every detail. Save every email, every message. Build a paper trail. The rest of the week was pure chaos. Peterson didn't return. The substitute became the permanent teacher. Rumors flew fast. Someone said Peterson had been arrested. Another claimed he had fled the state. The truth, though, was far more ordinary. Detective Mills told us he was on administrative leave while they conducted the investigation. But Peterson's reputation was already in ruins. Parents started questioning the school. The school board got involved. Then, the backlash hit. Peterson's supporters came out in full force. A group of parents started a petition, claiming he was being unfairly attacked. They called Emily and me liars, accusing us of wanting attention. The AI photos of Emily resurfaced with new captions, claiming she was trying to destroy a good man because he wouldn't sleep with her. It was brutal. Emily missed 3 days of school. I started eating lunch in the library to avoid the cafeteria. But then, something surprising happened. Avery came forward. She walked into the police station with her parents and gave a full statement about Peterson's inappropriate behavior. Her parents had found the texts and believed her. Then, Olivia's parents contacted Detective Mills. They said their daughter had something to say. One by one, girls started speaking up. Not in public. Not at school. But to the police. To the investigators. Mrs. Williams kept us informed. She told us that more teachers were coming forward too. Not with hard evidence, but with observations. Concerns they had raised that had been ignored. Patterns they had noticed. Mr. Garcia had kept records for the past 3 years of his concerns about Peterson's behavior with female students. Ms. Miller had emails where Thompson told her to mind her own business when she raised concerns. The investigation expanded. It wasn't just about Peterson anymore. It was about a system that had protected him. A system that silenced complaints. A system that put reputation over student safety. Detective Mills interviewed dozens of people. Current students. Former students. Teachers. Administrators. The stories were all too similar. Girls who were struggling. Peterson offering help. Boundaries that slowly faded. In a school that looked the other way. The investigation took months, not weeks. There were depositions. Evidence reviews. Legal processes that seemed endless. Peterson remained on leave while lawyers battled over the details. The community remained divided. Some called for his dismissal. Others insisted he was innocent. Emily and I kept going to school. Facing judgment from both sides. Some days were easier than others. The AI photos kept popping up, despite all our efforts to take them down. New rumors emerged every week. But we had each other. And slowly, we started gaining support. Girls who had stayed silent began to nod at us in the halls. Some even whispered, "Thank you," when no one else was looking. After what felt like an eternity, Peterson was finally arrested. The charges were grave, multiple counts of inappropriate behavior with minors. The evidence was irrefutable. It wasn't just our testimony, they found physical evidence when they searched his home, photos on his computer. Trophies from his victims. The great books with stars weren't just tracking academic progress. They were marking his conquests. The community erupted. Parents who had defended him were left in shock. Some said they had always felt something was wrong. The school called for emergency meetings. They brought in counselors and promised full cooperation with the investigation. Thompson announced his early retirement, claiming he wanted to spend more time with his family. But everyone knew what was really happening. He was getting out before they could fire him. The best part was what happened with the students. The ones who had tormented Emily started to back off. Some even offered apologies. Not many, but a few. The AI photos vanished from circulation. Ryan got suspended for 2 weeks after it came out that he was one of the ones who had created them. His football scholarship offers started to dry up. Turns out, colleges don't want students who create explicit images of minors, even if they're AI generated. Emily started to heal. It wasn't easy. There were still tough days, still judgment from some people. But now she had support. Survivors who understood. Teachers who stood by her. Even some parents who apologized for not seeing the truth earlier. She began talking about college again. About becoming a social worker, to help other girls like her. Like us. The legal process moved slowly. Hearings, delays, motions. Peterson's lawyer fought tooth and nail to have the charges reduced or dismissed. But the evidence was too overwhelming. Too many victims. Too much documentation. Eventually, Peterson took a plea deal, 15 years in prison. He'd be listed on the offender registry. He'd never be allowed to teach again. It wasn't enough for everything he had done, but it was a form of justice. The school district made some changes, too. New policies on student-teacher interactions. Mandatory reporting training. Anonymous tip lines. They couldn't undo the harm, but they could try to prevent it from happening again. Some people said it was too little, too late. And they were probably right. But at least future students might be safer. I testified at one of the hearings. I talked about that day behind the gym. About how Emily saved me. How she had tried to protect other girls, even when everyone else turned their back on her. The prosecutor said our evidence was pivotal. The grade books. The photos. The pattern we had documented. Without that, Peterson might have walked free. Emily squeezed my hand after I finished testifying. We had done it. Together. Life slowly returned to normal. As normal as it could be. Emily graduated with honors, despite everything. She walked across the stage with her baby in the audience, her head held high. I still had 2 more years of high school ahead, but they were different now. Better. The culture had shifted. People started becoming more aware. More cautious. More willing to stand up and speak out. Mrs. Williams took on the role of our unofficial mentor. She helped Emily with her college applications and guided me through figuring out my own future. She told us we'd shown more courage than most adults she knew. That we had made a real impact. Possibly even saved lives. I wasn't so sure about that. We just did what seemed right. What needed to be done. When Peterson's sentence was announced, it made the local news. The victims weren't named, but it was clear who they were talking about. Emily gave a single interview. It was anonymous, her voice altered. She said she hoped other girls would find the courage to speak up. That they would be believed. That the people meant to protect them would actually step in. She said she was healing. Moving forward. That her baby would grow up in a world where people actually listened. And that's pretty much the entire story. It wasn't neat or easy. It was messy, painful, and complex. Nothing like the dramatic moments you see in movies. Just two teenage girls who refused to let a predator keep hurting people. Who found their voices even when everyone else tried to silence them. Who learned that doing the right thing sometimes means things will get worse before they get better. But eventually, they do get better. Emily's in college now. Doing well. I'm applying next year. I'm considering criminal justice or social work. Maybe both. Oh, and those AI photos? The ones behind them didn't just face school punishment. Turns out, creating and distributing explicit images of minors, whether AI generated or not, is a federal offense. They're all now doing community service and are on probation. Their dreams of college are pretty much shot. Good riddance, honestly. Peterson's in prison where he belongs. Thompson is gone. The school is safer. Not perfect, but better. And Emily? She's the strongest person I know. Still kind. Still helping others. Still refusing to let the past define her. She says her baby saved her life. Gave her a reason to keep fighting. But I think she saved herself. And maybe she saved a lot of other girls too. That's all I have. Thanks for reading this entire story. Had to get it all off my chest. If you're going through something similar, speak up. Find someone who believes in you. Don't give up.